Sarah Mitchell stared at her phone screen, reading the text message for the 5th time that morning. 3 words that had shattered her carefully constructed Tuesday afternoon. I need space. Her husband of 7 years, David, had sent it 40 minutes ago. No explanation. No context. Just those 3 words followed by radio silence. She sat frozen in their kitchen, the coffee mug in her hand growing cold, trying to understand how she had missed the signs. Because there had to have been signs, right? People don't just wake up one day and decide they need space from their marriage. Not without reason. Not without warning. But as she replayed the last few weeks in her mind, searching desperately for clues, she found nothing but ordinary moments. Breakfast conversations about work, weekend grocery shopping, their usual Netflix routine on Sunday nights. Everything had seemed fine. Better than fine, actually. They had laughed together just 3 days ago about a stupid meme he'd shown her. So what had changed? What had she missed? And why did something about this entire situation feel fundamentally wrong? David had always been the communicator in their relationship, the one who insisted on talking through problems, no matter how small. The man who had once driven 2 hours back from a business trip just to apologize in person for a petty argument about dishes. That David didn't send cryptic text messages and disappear. That David certainly didn't ask for space without at least attempting a conversation first. Sarah's best friend Monica had called it immediately when she'd sent her a screenshot. Girl, something's off. That's not how your husband operates. That's not even how men who actually need space operate. Monica had been through 2 divorces and considered herself an expert on the warning signs of relationship trouble. When men really need space, they either tell you why or they're terrible at hiding it. This is something else entirely. Sarah tried calling him, straight to voicemail. She tried texting back, asking if they could talk, if everything was okay, if this was about something specific. The messages showed us delivered but not read. She checked their shared calendar. His schedule showed a normal workday, meetings from 9 to 5, nothing unusual. She opened the app for their shared bank account, feeling slightly guilty but increasingly desperate for information. No suspicious charges. No cash withdrawals. Everything looked completely normal. She pulled up the location sharing on her phone, something they'd set up years ago for practical reasons, not surveillance. His phone was at his office downtown, exactly where it should be on a Tuesday afternoon. Everything checked out. Everything made sense. Except none of it actually made any sense at all. The worst part wasn't the confusion or even the hurt. It was the doubt that had started creeping in the moment she'd read that text. Doubt about her perception, her memory, her ability to read her own husband. Had she been blind to problems in their marriage? Was she one of those wives who got blindsided by divorce papers because she'd been too oblivious to see the cracks forming? Sarah had always prided herself on being aware, present, emotionally intelligent. She'd read the books, done the work, kept the lines of communication open. Or at least she thought she had. Now she was questioning everything. Every conversation from the past month suddenly felt suspicious in retrospect. Every time he'd been on his phone. Every late night at the office. Every smile that maybe hadn't quite reached his eyes. Was she reconstructing history to fit a narrative, or had she genuinely missed something enormous? She decided to give him space, at least for the rest of the day. Maybe he really did just need time to think. Maybe there was a work crisis he couldn't talk about. Maybe he was dealing with something personal, some internal struggle he needed to process alone before bringing it to her. She could respect that. She would respect that. But she also couldn't just sit in their apartment spiraling into anxiety and paranoia. She needed to do something, anything, to feel less helpless. So she did what she always did when life felt out of control. She cleaned. She started with the kitchen, scrubbing counters that were already clean, reorganizing cabinets that didn't need organizing. Then she moved to the living room, vacuuming every corner, fluffing pillows, straightening books. She cleaned like she could somehow scrub away the uncertainty, like perfect order in her physical space might translate to clarity in her mental one. By the time evening arrived, she had cleaned the entire apartment twice and still hadn't heard from David. She made herself dinner, though she barely tasted it. She tried to watch TV, but couldn't focus on anything. Every few minutes, she checked her phone. No messages. No calls. Nothing. At 8 o'clock, She finally broke down and called Monica again. Still nothing. Monica asked immediately. Sarah could hear the concern in her voice. Nothing. It's been almost 7 hours, Monica. 7 hours. He's never gone this long without responding to me, even when we've been fighting. Which we weren't even fighting. Monica was quiet for a moment, and Sarah could practically hear her thinking. Okay, I'm going to say something, and I need you to not freak out. But I also need you to actually consider it. Sarah's stomach dropped. What? Have you checked if he's actually at work? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Had she checked? Really checked? She'd seen his location at the office building, but that didn't mean he was actually working. That didn't mean he was alone. That didn't mean he wasn't having a conversation with someone else about their marriage, about his feelings, about whatever this space thing really meant. I saw his location, Sarah said slowly. He's been at the office all day. Monica made a skeptical sound. His phone's been at the office all day. That's not necessarily the same thing. The implication was clear, and Sarah felt her chest tighten. You think he left his phone there on purpose? That he's somewhere else? She heard Monica sigh. I think that when someone acts completely out of character, you have to consider that maybe they're not acting alone. Maybe someone is influencing them. Or maybe there's something going on that you don't know about yet. Sarah's mind immediately went to the worst possible scenario, the one she'd been trying desperately not to think about all day. An affair. Could David be having an affair? Was that why he needed space? Was he trying to figure out his feelings for someone else? The thought made her physically ill, but she forced herself to actually consider it rationally. Were there signs? Had he been distant? Had their intimacy changed? She ran through their recent history. They'd made love just last week. It had been good, normal, connected. He'd held her afterward and told her he loved her. He'd seemed happy, genuinely happy. But then again, people having affairs were often good at seeming happy, weren't they? They had to be, to maintain the deception. God, was she really doing this? Was she really sitting here convincing herself her husband might be cheating based on a single text message asking for space? But Monica's words kept echoing in her mind. When someone acts completely out of character. Because that was the key point, wasn't it? This was completely out of character for David. The David she knew, the David she built a life with, would never ask for space via text message. Would never go 7 hours without responding to her. Would never make her sit alone in their apartment, spiraling into worst-case scenarios, wondering what she'd done wrong. So either she didn't know her husband as well as she thought she did, or something else was happening here. Something that had forced him into this uncharacteristic behavior. And she needed to find out what. She told Monica she had to go and hung up before her friend could argue. Then she did something she'd never done before in their entire relationship. She logged into their cell phone account online and pulled up David's phone records. Her hands were shaking as she scrolled through the data. She felt like she was violating his privacy, crossing some fundamental line in their marriage. But hadn't he already crossed a line by disappearing on her without explanation? Didn't she have a right to know what was going on? She told herself she was justified, but the guilt sat heavy in her stomach anyway. She scanned through the recent calls and texts. Most of them were to her, to his coworkers, to his mom. Nothing suspicious, nothing that stood out. Then she noticed something odd. For the past week, there had been multiple calls to a number she didn't recognize. The calls were short, mostly just a few minutes, but they happened every day. Sometimes multiple times a day. She grabbed her own phone and, with trembling fingers, typed the unknown number into the search bar. Nothing came up. No name, no business, no obvious identification. Before she could talk herself out of it, she called the number. It rang twice, then went to a generic voicemail. You've reached the voicemail box of 781-5550243. Please leave a message. A woman's voice. Young. Professional. No name given. Sarah hung up without leaving a message, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Who was this woman? Why was David calling her multiple times a day? Why hadn't he mentioned her? She tried to think of innocent explanations. A coworker, a client, a doctor's office. But none of those fit with the frequency of the calls or with David's sudden request for space. She looked at the call logs again. The last call to this number had been yesterday afternoon. It had lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes was a long time for a casual call. That was a conversation. That was something important. Sarah felt the room starting to spin. She sat down on the couch, putting her head between her knees, trying to breathe. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't her life. She and David were solid. They were the couple their friends envied. They had plans, dreams, a future they'd mapped out together. They were supposed to be trying for a baby next year. They'd literally had that conversation 2 weeks ago, lying in bed, talking about what their kids might look like, whose eyes they'd have, whose stubbornness. And now what? Now he was calling some mystery woman multiple times a day and asking her for space via text message? None of this made sense. None of this fit with the marriage she thought she had. But the evidence was right there in front of her. The call logs didn't lie. The unanswered messages didn't lie. The 7 hours of silence didn't lie. Something was happening. Something bad. And she was going to find out what? She grabbed her keys and her jacket. She couldn't just sit here anymore, drowning in speculation and fear. She needed to see him. She needed to look him in the eyes and ask him directly what was going on. She needed to know if her marriage was falling apart, and if so, why nobody had bothered to tell her until it was apparently too late. The drive to his office took 20 minutes, but it felt like both an eternity and no time at all. She rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd approach it. Calm, rational, not accusatory. She didn't want to push him further away. She just wanted answers. She just wanted her husband back. The husband who told her everything. The husband who would never make her feel this lost and scared. She parked in the visitor lot and made her way to the building entrance. The security guard recognized her and waved her through. She'd been here hundreds of times. Office parties, lunch deliveries, the occasional surprise visit. She knew the way to his floor, to his desk by heart. The elevator ride up felt surreal, like she was watching herself in a movie. Like this was happening to someone else. When the doors opened, she stepped out into the familiar hallway, the one with the industrial carpet and the motivational posters that David always made fun of. She could see through the glass walls into the open office space. Most people had left for the day, but a few dedicated souls were still at their desks, hunched over laptops. She scanned the space, looking for David's dark hair, his blue button-down shirt, the desk she'd visited a dozen times. And then she saw it. His desk. Empty. His laptop was closed. His chair was pushed in. The light above his workspace was off. He wasn't there. He hadn't been there, maybe for hours. But his phone's location had shown him here all day, which meant Monica had been right. He'd left his phone here deliberately. He'd wanted her to think he was at work when he was really somewhere else, doing something else, with someone else. Sarah felt her legs go weak. She grabbed the edge of a nearby desk to steady herself. One of David's coworkers, a guy named Tim, looked up from his computer with surprise. "Sarah? Hey, you okay? You look pale." She tried to form words, but her mouth felt dry. "I'm looking for David. Have you seen him?" Tim's expression shifted to confusion. "David? He left early today. Said he had a personal appointment or something. That was like, I don't know, around 1? Maybe earlier. 1 o'clock. He'd left at 1 o'clock. He'd sent her the 'I need space' message at 1:15. And then he'd left his phone at his desk and disappeared. For 8 hours. Sarah felt the world tilting. Did he say where he was going? Or when he'd be back? Tim shook his head. "Sorry, no. He just grabbed his jacket and took off. Is everything all right? Do you need me to try calling him?" She shook her head quickly. "No, it's fine. I'll just call him later. Thanks, Tim." She walked back to the elevator on autopilot, her mind racing. Where had he gone? Who had he gone to meet? Was it the woman with the mysterious number? Were they together right now, while she was driving around the city, looking for him like a detective in a bad crime drama? The elevator doors closed, and she caught sight of her reflection in the polished metal. She looked haunted, desperate, like someone whose entire life had just been revealed as a lie. When she got back to her car, she just sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. She pulled out her phone and opened her messages with David. Still no response to any of her texts. She typed out a new message, her fingers moving almost without conscious thought. "I know you're not at work. I know you left your phone there. I know something is going on. Please, David, just talk to me. Whatever this is, we can work through it. But I can't fix what I don't understand. She hit send and watched the message show as delivered. Then, after a moment, it showed as read. Her heart leaped. He was looking at his messages. He was seeing this. 3 dots appeared at the bottom of the screen. He was typing. The dots disappeared, then appeared again, disappeared again. She could picture him, wherever he was, starting and stopping, trying to figure out what to say. How to say it, whether to say anything at all. Finally, after what felt like an hour but was probably only 2 minutes, a message came through. I'm sorry. I can't explain right now. Please just trust me. I'll be home tonight. We'll talk then. I promise. Sarah read the message 3 times. It didn't make her feel better. If anything, it made everything worse. I can't explain right now implied there was something to explain. Something big. Something that required face-to-face conversation. Something that had made him run away from his office in the middle of the workday and hide from her for 8 hours. She typed back, Are you safe? The response came quickly this time. Yes, I'm safe. Are you? The question caught her off guard. Why wouldn't she be safe? She was the one sitting in a parking lot trying to figure out why her marriage was imploding. He was the one who disappeared. I'm fine, she typed back. What time will you be home? Around 9. Maybe a little later. I really am sorry, Sarah, for all of this. I know it doesn't make sense right now. She wanted to ask 1,000 more questions. She wanted to demand answers immediately. But something in his messages, some tone she couldn't quite identify, made her hold back. There was something vulnerable in his words. Something almost scared. And David was never scared. Okay, she finally replied. I'll see you at 9. We need to talk about everything. I know. We will. I love you. The last 3 words hit her harder than anything else that day. Because they sounded true. They sounded desperate, even. Like he needed her to know. Like he was afraid she might doubt it. She drove home in a daze, her mind spinning through every possible scenario. By the time she pulled into their apartment complex, she'd imagined everything from terminal illness to witness protection to corporate espionage. None of it felt real. None of it felt possible. This was her life. Her boring, normal, happy life. These things didn't happen to people like her and David. They happened in movies and novels and true crime podcasts. Not in real apartments to real couples who argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. She let herself back into the apartment and immediately noticed that she could smell David's cologne. Faint, but unmistakable. Had he been here while she was out? She walked through the rooms, looking for signs of his presence. In their bedroom, she found his work bag, the one he carried to the office every day. It was sitting on the bed, carefully placed, obviously intentional. Her heart racing, she unzipped it. Inside was his work laptop, his badge, his wallet, and his wedding ring. His wedding ring. Sarah picked it up with shaking hands, the gold band catching the light from the bedside lamp. He'd left his wedding ring. Men didn't just casually remove their wedding rings. That meant something. That meant something terrible. She sank onto the bed, clutching the ring, feeling tears finally start to fall. All day she'd held it together, pushed through the fear and confusion with determination and logic. But this broke her. This small piece of gold that represented their vows, their commitment, their entire relationship. He'd taken it off. Why had he taken it off? She thought about the mysterious phone calls, the early departure from work, the 8 hours of silence, the cryptic messages about not being able to explain. And now his wedding ring, removed, left behind like a message she was too afraid to interpret. Was he leaving her? Was this his way of telling her it was over? Was the space just a gentle way of saying goodbye? But then she remembered his last message. I love you. He'd said he loved her. People who were leaving didn't say they loved you, did they? Unless they were trying to soften the blow. Unless they were preparing you for the worst while trying to maintain some shred of kindness. She heard a key in the front door, and her entire body went rigid. She looked at the clock. 8:45. He was early. She stood up quickly, still holding his wedding ring, and walked to the bedroom doorway. She could hear him in the entryway, taking off his shoes. The ordinary sound of it, the familiar routine, made everything feel even more surreal. How many times had she heard that exact sound? How many times had she come around the corner to greet him with a kiss and a question about his day? But this time was different. This time, everything was different. She walked out into the hallway, and there he was. David, her husband, looking exhausted, disheveled, and somehow smaller than she remembered. His eyes met hers, and she saw something in them that made her chest tighten. "Sarah," he said quietly, "we need to talk." She held up his wedding ring. "You think?" Her voice came out harder than she intended, edged with hurt and anger and 8 hours of accumulated fear. He looked at the ring in her hand, and something flickered across his face. "Pain, maybe. Or regret. I can explain that," he said. "I can explain everything. But you have to promise me you'll listen to the whole thing before you react. Before you make any decisions. Can you promise me that?" Sarah wanted to say no. She wanted to scream at him, to demand answers immediately, to refuse to play whatever game this was. But there was something in his expression that stopped her. He looked desperate, genuine, and despite everything, despite the ring and the phone calls and the 8 hours of terror, she still loved him. She still wanted to understand. "Okay," she said finally. "I'm listening." David gestured toward the living room couch, and they both sat down, maintaining a careful distance between them. He ran his hands through his hair, a nervous gesture Sarah recognized from every difficult conversation they'd ever had. But his hands were shaking more than usual, she noticed. His whole body seemed tense, coiled, like he was preparing for impact. "First," he started, "I need you to know that I love you. Everything I've done, everything I'm about to tell you, comes from a place of love and protection. I need you to remember that, no matter how bad this sounds at first." Sarah's stomach dropped. That was never a good opening. "David, you're scaring me." He nodded, accepting this. "I know, and I'm sorry. I've been scared too. Terrified, actually. For 3 weeks now. 3 weeks. That timeline caught her attention. What happened 3 weeks ago? David took a deep breath, and Sarah watched him steel himself for whatever came next. 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call at work. From a woman I didn't know. She said her name was Jennifer Torres, and that she was a private investigator. At first, I thought it was spam, you know? Like those calls about your car's extended warranty. But then she said something that made me listen. She said she had information about my wife that I needed to hear. Information that could put you in danger. Sarah felt her blood run cold. "What?" "David, what are you talking about?" He held up a hand, asking her to wait, to let him finish. She wouldn't tell me over the phone. She insisted we meet in person. She said it was too sensitive, too serious. So I met her the next day, during my lunch break. And she told me something that sounded absolutely insane. But then she showed me evidence, documentation, proof. And I realized it wasn't insane at all. It was real. And it was bad. Sarah's mind was racing, trying to catch up. Evidence about me? "David, I have no idea what you're talking about." "Evidence of what?" David looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Sad, maybe. Or pitying. "She told me that you're not who you think you are. That your past, your identity, everything you remember about your life before we met, that most of it is false. That you were in witness protection." The words hung in the air, making no sense. Sarah just stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for the moment this turned into some kind of bizarre joke. But David's face remained serious, pained. "That's ridiculous," Sarah said finally. "David, that's completely ridiculous. I would know if I was in witness protection. That's not something you just forget." David nodded slowly. "That's what I thought too." But Jennifer explained that in certain extreme cases, particularly involving severe trauma, the U.S. Marshal Service sometimes uses therapeutic memory suppression. They help witnesses construct new identities so thoroughly that they essentially become those people. It's controversial, supposedly rarely used, but it exists. Sarah stood up abruptly, needing to move, to pace, to do something with the energy coursing through her body. "This is insane. You know this is insane, right? Some random woman calls you and tells you your wife is in witness protection and has suppressed memories, and you believe her." David pulled something from his jacket pocket, a manila folder. He set it on the coffee table between them. "I didn't want to believe her. I spent the first week trying to prove her wrong. But then she started showing me things. Documents, photos, records that I couldn't explain away." Sarah stared at the folder like it might explode. "What's in there?" "Your real past, David said quietly. Or at least, what Jennifer says is your real past. Birth certificate for a girl named Emma Reeves, born in Phoenix, Arizona. School records. A police report from when you were 17. Photos of you with people I've never seen before. A family I've never heard you mention. She picked up the folder with trembling hands and opened it. The first thing she saw was a birth certificate. Emma Louise Reeves, born June 3, 1992, in Phoenix, Arizona. The date was right, the birthday she'd always known. But the name was wrong. The location was wrong. She'd been Sarah Mitchell her whole life, born in Portland, Oregon. Hadn't she? She flipped through more pages. There was a school photo, maybe from middle school. The girl in the picture looked eerily like Sarah, but younger, with a different haircut. Below it was what looked like a family portrait. A man, a woman, 2 kids. One of them was definitely the same girl from the school photo. The other was a younger boy, maybe 10 years old. Sarah studied the faces of the parents. Did she recognize them? No. But there was something about the woman's eyes that felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain. This doesn't prove anything, Sarah said, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. These could be doctored. AI can fake anything now. David nodded. That's what I said too. So Jennifer gave me a way to verify it. She said if I took a sample of your DNA and ran it through certain databases, I could confirm that Emma Reeves and Sarah Mitchell are the same person. She gave me the name of a lab that specializes in this kind of thing. Discreet, works with law enforcement. Sarah felt violated at the implication. You took my DNA. Without my knowledge. No, David said quickly. No, I couldn't do that. That felt like such a massive violation of trust. But I also couldn't just ignore this. So I did something else. I hired a different private investigator to look into your background independently. Someone Jennifer didn't know. I gave them your information, your social security number, everything I had access to. And I asked them to trace your history back as far as they could. Sarah's legs felt weak. She sat back down. And they couldn't find anything before 12 years ago. Nothing. No school records, no medical records, no employment history. Sarah Mitchell essentially appeared out of nowhere in 2013, got a social security number, enrolled in community college, and started building a life. But before that, nothing. Like you didn't exist. Sarah's mind was spinning. This couldn't be real. She remembered her childhood. She remembered growing up in Portland. She remembered her parents, though they died in a car accident before she'd met David. She remembered her college years, her first apartment, her first job. All of it was there, in her memory, clear and accessible. I remember my life, she insisted. I remember my parents. I remember my childhood home. I remember my best friend from high school, Katie. I remember learning to drive, graduating, all of it. David's expression was gentle, sad. Do you have photos? Of any of that? The question hit her like a punch. She opened her mouth to say yes, of course, but then she realized she didn't. She'd always told people she'd lost everything in a fire at her old apartment before she'd met David. Every photo, every keepsake gone. It was a tragedy she'd mourned. Except now, she couldn't remember the fire itself, couldn't remember the smell of smoke or the moment of discovering the loss. It was just something that had happened, a fact without sensory detail. There was a fire, she said weakly. I lost everything in a fire. David nodded. I know. You told me that when we first met. But Sarah, I looked for records of that fire. Police reports, fire department records, insurance claims. Nothing. There's no documentation that it ever happened. Sarah felt reality starting to bend around her. Stop. Just stop. This is crazy. You're telling me my entire life is a lie? That I'm someone named Emma? That I witnessed something so terrible I needed a new identity and suppressed memories? None of that makes any sense. David reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I know it doesn't. Trust me, I've been living with this information for 3 weeks, and it still doesn't feel real. But Jennifer has more. She has information about what you witnessed, about why you were put into protection, and about why it's no longer safe. That stopped Sarah cold. What do you mean, no longer safe? David's jaw tightened. The man you testified against, the reason you needed protection in the first place. He was just released from prison. He got out on a technicality 3 months ago. And according to Jennifer, he's been looking for you. He has resources, connections. He's determined. And he's getting close. Sarah felt the room starting to spin. I would remember testifying. I would remember being afraid. I would remember some man who wanted to hurt me. You can't just erase something like that. David pulled out his phone and opened it to a photo. He handed it to her. Do you recognize this man? The photo showed a man in his 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, cold eyes. Sarah studied his face, trying to feel any flicker of recognition. Nothing. She'd never seen him before in her life. No. Who is he? David took the phone back, his expression grim. His name is Marcus Reeves. Your father. Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. It was absurd. My father? David, my father died in a car accident 12 years ago, along with my mother. I went to their funeral. Do you remember the funeral? David asked softly. Really remember it? The details? What the service was like? Who was there? What the coffins looked like? Sarah opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. She remembered being sad. She remembered grief. But the actual funeral itself, it was fuzzy, like trying to remember a dream. She could feel that it had happened, but she couldn't see it clearly. Memory of grief is different from memory of events, she said defensively. Trauma makes things blurry. David nodded. It does. But Jennifer says Marcus Reeves is very much alive. And he's not your father by choice. He's your biological father, but he was never a real parent to you. He ran a criminal organization, trafficking and racketeering mostly. When you were 17, you witnessed him murder someone. A business partner who tried to leave the organization. Marcus killed him in your family's home, thought you were asleep upstairs. But you saw. And when the marshals approached you months later, you agreed to testify. The story sounded like something from a movie. It couldn't be her life. And this Jennifer person, Sarah said, trying to find holes in the logic, this private investigator. How does she know all this? Why is she telling you? What does she want? David hesitated, and Sarah saw conflict in his expression. She says she's working for people within the Marshal Service who are concerned that your identity has been compromised. She claims there's been a leak, that Marcus has informants, and that it's only a matter of time before he finds you. She says the people she works with can't go through official channels without tipping off the leak. So they're trying to help off the books. Sarah's skepticism flared. That's convenient. Very convenient. David, doesn't any part of this sound like a scam to you? Like someone trying to con us out of something? David nodded. Yes, that's exactly what I thought at first. I thought maybe she wanted money, or information, or she was trying to blackmail me somehow. But she hasn't asked for anything. She's just been providing information and warning me, telling me to be careful, telling me to watch for any signs you're being followed or surveilled. And the phone calls? Sarah asked, suddenly remembering. That number you've been calling multiple times a day for the past week. That's her. David looked surprised that she knew, then resigned. Yes, Jennifer. Once she told me everything, I couldn't stop calling her. I had questions constantly. I kept thinking of new angles to verify or disprove her story. And I was trying to figure out what to do. How to tell you. Whether to tell you at all. Sarah felt anger rising through the confusion. Whether to tell me. This is my life, David. If any of this is true, if there's even a chance it's true, I have a right to know. You've been sitting on this for 3 weeks. David's expression hardened slightly. I've been trying to protect you. Jennifer said that forcing someone to confront suppressed memories can be dangerous, potentially traumatic. She said if I wasn't careful, I could do more harm than good. I've been researching, talking to therapists anonymously online, trying to figure out the right way to handle this. By asking me for space. Sarah snapped. By sending me a text message and disappearing for 8 hours? By taking off your wedding ring? God, David, I thought you were leaving me. I thought you were having an affair. David's face fell. The ring. Sarah, I took the ring off because Jennifer said if Marcus's people are watching, they'll target you through me. If they think I know where you are, what your new identity is, they might use me to get to you. So I've been trying to create distance, to make it look like we're having problems, to make me less useful as a target. Sarah felt tears starting to fall, the culmination of a day of terror and confusion. So you thought making me think our marriage was falling apart was the solution? You thought that would somehow help? David reached for her again, and this time she let him take her hand. I know it was wrong. I've been so scared, Sarah. I didn't know what to do. I still don't know what to do. But today, something happened that made me realize I couldn't keep this from you anymore. Sarah's heart sank further. What happened today? David took a deep breath. This morning, when I was leaving for work, I noticed a car parked across the street. Dark sedan, tinted windows. It had been there the night before, too, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. But this morning, when I left the apartment, it started following me. I drove around, took random turns, trying to lose it or confirm I was just being crazy. But it stayed with me, all the way to my office. Sarah felt cold fear settling into her bones. Did you see who was driving? David shook his head. Couldn't get close enough. But when I got to work, I called Jennifer. She told me to leave my phone at the office and meet her at a secure location. So that's what I did. I left my phone so if anyone was tracking it, they'd think I was at work all day. And I went to meet her. Where did you meet her? Sarah asked. A hotel downtown. She'd rented a room under a fake name. When I got there, she showed me more evidence. Photos of a car that had been following me. Security footage from our apartment building, showing other potential surveillance. Sarah, she's been watching our building, documenting these people, and there are at least 3 different individuals who've been conducting surveillance on us over the past week. Sarah stood up again, unable to sit still with all this information pouring over her. Okay, let's say I believe all this. Let's say any of it is real. What am I supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? David stood too, facing her. Jennifer says we have 2 options. Option 1, we run. She can help us disappear, get new identities, start over somewhere else. She has contacts who can facilitate it. Off the books, no official trail. We'd have to leave everything behind. Our jobs, our apartment, our friends, our entire lives. We become completely different people and never look back. Sarah felt her pulse hammering in her ears. And the second option? She asked, barely above a whisper. David hesitated, the kind of hesitation that makes the world feel heavier. Option 2, we stay. We pretend nothing is happening. Jennifer says if we don't run, we follow her instructions exactly. We keep our routines the same, don't confront anyone, don't react, don't show fear. She believes whoever's watching us wants something, and staying might give us a chance to figure out what. Sarah stared at him, a cold wave crawling up her spine. So either we lose our entire lives, she said slowly, or we keep living them, knowing someone is out there, watching every move we make. David nodded. I wish there were a third option. For a long moment, no one spoke. The apartment felt smaller, the shadows heavier, as if the walls themselves were listening. Finally, Sarah exhaled. Then we choose the option that keeps us alive. For now. David swallowed hard. So we stay. She nodded once, firmly, though her hands trembled. Yes, we stay and we pretend nothing is wrong. But as she reached to turn off the kitchen light, Sarah caught a flicker of movement outside the window, a silhouette, gone in an instant. Her breath hitched. Pretending was about to be a lot harder than she thought.